Hello, and welcome to Connect, the show where we explore ways to combat loneliness, foster connections, and promote healthy aging across Massachusetts. I'm your host, Sandra Harris, co-leader of the Massachusetts Coalition to Build Community and End Loneliness, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. As February rolls around, many of us are reminded of Valentine's Day, a day to celebrate love. But for those living with loneliness, this time of year can be especially isolating. Whether you're single, grieving a loved one, or struggling with connection, focusing on love can bring challenges. But here's the good news. There are ways to navigate this season with resilience, hope, and even joy. Today, we're exploring strategies for dealing with loneliness on Valentine's Day and throughout this season of love. We'll explore how to cultivate meaningful relationships, reframe our perspectives, and create a sense of connection, no matter our circumstances. To help us unpack this topic, we're thrilled to welcome an expert who's been deeply involved in mental health and community well-being. Our guest today is Dr. Jin Hui Joo, a renowned psychiatrist who specializes in geriatrics, mental health, and loneliness interventions at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Joo has worked extensively with older adults facing social isolation, helping them find pathways to deeper connections and healthier living. Her compassionate approach and research-based insights make her a perfect fit for today's conversation. Dr. Joo, welcome to Connect.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
Good. Dr. Joo, Valentine's Day is often portrayed as a time for romantic love. This season can be tough for those who might be feeling alone and lonely. How do societal expectations around Valentine's Day impact people's emotional well-being?
I think that there are a lot of social expectations that a person is connected, that they have a family around them, that they may be a part of a couple, that they may have friends who care about them. I think that there may be people who don't have that. And sometimes Valentine's Day reminds us, maybe negatively, that we may have kind of conflictual relationships that may give us some pain, that maybe we don't have the most meaningful and deep relationships that we would like. And so we may judge ourselves negatively and think lesser than. I think that could be one of the kind of the downsides of the season and of Valentine's Day. I think a positive way to turn that around is that it might be just kind of a reminder about how important relationships are. And that we shouldn't get caught up in judging ourselves to others and thinking that we fall short. But think of it as a reminder that relationships are really, really important, and that a little kickstart, if you're not happy or dissatisfied or feeling isolated, to do something about it is maybe a good way of thinking about the season and Valentine's Day.
For our viewers who are feeling the sting of loneliness in February, what practical steps can they take to create meaningful connections?
Yeah, I think it can be done at many levels. I think maybe if you start with yourself and think about how are you defining social interaction? So sometimes people get into trouble because when they think about relationships, they're thinking about really meaningful, deep relationships, and often thinking that they don't have them. But if you can broaden your idea of what a meaningful relationship is, it can be a neighbor that you have a nice conversation with. It could be people that you kind of meet on a daily basis with whom you may not have the deepest relationship, but with whom you have some positive experiences with. That those are also meaningful relationships. So if you kind of broaden it to mean not only people who are perhaps maybe your confidants or people that you see every day and have a great deal of participation in your life, that may kind of perhaps help you realize that you do have relationships that are meaningful to some degree. I think defining what positive interaction means could be really, really helpful. And I think also having gratitude and recognition of the relationships that you have is also very important. And if you have relationships, however deep they are, there are also opportunities to make them even deeper or to reconnect with people in your social network that you may not have been connecting to regularly.
Okay, so let's take a deeper dive because loneliness isn't just an emotional experience. It's really a health issue too, right?
Yeah.
So can you share some insights about the physical and mental health effects of loneliness?
Yeah, so there are lots and lots of studies about the impact of social isolation and loneliness. So I think most people recognize that loneliness is associated with a lot of chronic conditions. So for example, heart disease, depression, mental health, dementia, and cognitive disorders. And studies have shown that also chronic loneliness can also increase the risk of mortality. So it is a significant stress that should be addressed somehow. Sometimes what people do when they feel lonely or have negative feelings is to kind of endure it or to kind of sweep it under the rug, thinking that it will pass. But I think that might be a wrong approach, especially if the sense of isolation is chronic. When it's chronic, then there's a higher risk that it might be having actually negative physical and emotional impacts. So doing something about that is really, really important. So it definitely is a risk factor for poor health.
Okay. We're hearing and talking a lot about social health and how that has been missing in the mainstream language about good health. Can you talk a little bit about that, how social health is just as important as mental and physical health?
Yeah. I mean, human beings are social creatures. I don't think we can be ourselves without others. I think it's really, really important to recognize that. I think as we age, sometimes that's a little more difficult because of life changes. You know, we may retire, so we're not having the social connections at work. We may also develop some medical conditions that make it a bit more difficult to be mobile or get out of the house, as easily as we would like. Social connections as kind of empty nesters, for example, children may live far away. But I think even though those things may be the reality of aging, I think they give us an opportunity to try to think about how to address them. How do you decrease the distance between you and your children who may live across the country, for example. And so that thinking about social health, because it's such an integral component, in addition to physical health, mental health, overall, all of those things have to be folded in for a person to be healthy.
Okay, so we know now that you can have good physical health and good mental health, but if you don't have good social health, then you still may suffer, right?
Yes, definitely. Okay. I mean, I think we saw it during the pandemic, how this extreme social isolation led to increased rates of depression and even cognitive decline in some older adults. So I think it's definitely something to be taken seriously and awareness to be raised.
Okay. How about self-love? For those who may not have a partner or close connection, how can they celebrate themselves and their own worth during Valentine's Day and every day?
Yeah. I think one has to be healthy, meaning emotionally and mentally healthy. So having a good sense of one's self-worth, recognizing that people are definitely important, of course, relationships are important, but also being grounded and having a sense of oneself. And there is a truism that you can't be a good friend without loving yourself. You can't love others until you love yourself, and I think that's really true. So being really grounded and having a sense of yourself and your own value, I think, and being comfortable in your skin will make it easier to be open to others and for you to develop relationships.
So for a person who's struggling with self-love and just does not know how to start, what's the one thing that you recommend?
So it depends on how difficult and how deep that kind of self-criticism may be and kind of sense of unease with oneself. As a mental health professional, I'm thinking, well, maybe there are some ways to engage in counseling or maybe therapy. Sometimes I know that that doesn't necessarily appeal to some or is easy to get, but if you have friends with whom you can kind of discuss these things with, a friend who listens and who can give positive support, not kind of tell you what to do and how to change your life, but it's an opportunity to have a conversation, and sometimes in conversation, a lot of insights emerge, and a friend who knows you well could also bring out kind of the things that you might value about yourself, and some things that can bolster your self-esteem.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that Valentine's Day doesn't have to be limited to romantic love, right?
Definitely.
It can be a day to celebrate all kinds of love, friendships, family, community. Can you share examples of how people can connect with others on Valentine's Day, even if they feel alone?
Yeah.
Some things that you've seen that worked.
Right. So again, just think about, how do you connect with someone? From the simple things like sharing a kind word, being open to people, let's say, who live in your building, to, let's say, thinking about the people you are connected to, thinking about sending in Valentine's Day we often send cards, send a greeting, maybe making a phone call. I know letters are almost like things of the past, but because they are less common, they may be more valuable and a delight to get. You can also use all those different kind of technological ways of connecting, like even texts, which may seem impersonal, but in my research and with texting, it is one modality of kind of making people feel connected to you. So thinking about all those modalities, also thinking that if you're an older adult and technology isn't the most appealing thing and you may not have the best skills, is maybe thinking about joining a class. So that is the other thing, is there are various ways to connect with groups based on similar interests, and getting involved in a tech class or getting involved in other classes and getting connected with like-minded people. That might be another way to reach out.
So it appears that what I'm hearing again is that we can use self-care and the community to really reframe the day into something really positive and meaningful.
Yeah,
right?
I would say so. Again, think of it as a reminder of the importance of social relationships.
Okay. I've heard you talk about the community resources in the past. What role do local programs and social networks play in addressing loneliness, especially in Massachusetts?
Yeah. So one, social environment is so important. I know that we focus a lot kind of on the individual, but the individual is part of an environment, an ecology, social networks, community organizations. And we saw this in the pandemic, where programs were developed to alleviate the negative impact of social isolation among older adults particularly. And so there are various organizations of seniors who are volunteers, for example, who provide companionship to lonely, isolated older adults. There are organizations where seniors collect and provide various services in the community to help other older adults. There are councils on aging that provide lots of social activities depending on where you live. So those are very, very important. I think also social prescribing is becoming more recognized. So there is, I believe, an arts social prescribing program that connects older adults to arts programs in Massachusetts, and that they're doing a pilot. So I think those things are really, really important. There are barriers, though, because a lot of older adults don't know, the kinds of organizations that exist, and also sometimes it's hard getting connected. There are barriers like transportation. Sometimes there's what's called kind of social cognitive barriers, meaning sometimes persons may have negative perceptions about the value of participating in social interaction, or have kind of automatic thoughts that maybe a person that they know can't be trusted. So those things might be psychological barriers to engaging in those activities. So I think we have to kind of try to address both in some cases. But I think that there's really a lot of social activities and resources available. But I think it is a matter of finding out how to connect isolated older adults to those organizations.
And I think people can get started by contacting their local council on aging or senior center, where many programs are actually happening. To provide an example of community efforts, especially some of the work that we're doing in the coalition, our field reporter, Cara Solomon, is here to share her organization's Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge. This challenge provides an example of how organizations throughout Massachusetts are transforming Valentine's Day activities into daily acts of kindness. Welcome back, Cara.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Again, my name is Cara Solomon. I'm the founder of Everyday Boston. And I am so pleased to be here with my colleague, Nikki, who's the executive director of Everyday Boston. And we are going to tell you about our Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Valentine's Day Challenge, which is all about spreading kindness all across the city. So I'm gonna lead with this, Nikki, a really simple question. What is the challenge about?
So this is Everyday Boston's 7th annual Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge. This is my first one, which is exciting. And it's really just about spreading kindness throughout the city. It's about taking time out of your day to write an encouraging message or a note or a card, artwork that will be given to a stranger on Valentine's Day, just to have a day of kindness and love and whimsy and surprise, and to push back all the negativity that's been surrounding us, and bring a little joy into our lives in the middle of the cold New England winter.
Awesome. I love it. As you mentioned, this is our 7th annual. It used to be very sort of hodgepodge, putting homemade cards together, and they landed where they landed. Now we're organized this year. We've got campaign cards. We've got all these different partners, and we've got a bunch of, it's on a scale that's unknown to Everyday Boston. So how is it going? Nikki, tell us about the scale and how's it going?
Well, as you know, this challenge has kind of gotten a life of its own this year. So we set off, so last year you all did 1,000 cards, worked with community partners to make handmade cards and then pass them out in the city. This year, when we all got together, there's a couple more people working at Everyday Boston now. We thought we can do better, we can do bigger. So we had a goal of 5,000 cards. And I don't have one with me. That's a mistake. So the cards are half-page postcards, like 5x7 postcards. On one side, it says "Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor," has our logo, some information about us. We have some great sponsors on there. And then the back is a blank card to decorate. So we've been going out to community partners, so schools, universities, organizations, workplaces, prisons, community groups, individuals, anyone that wants to participate. And we find ourselves at 10,000 cards right now. So that is 10,000 hand-drawn, written, encouraging notes for 10,000 people to receive on February 14th. So it's going well. It's gotten large, and we're taking it day by day, and I think it really just shows how much people need something like this right now. We're in the middle of New England winter. We're all a little cold and grumpy, and at least from where I sit, and I know you and I have had conversations about this, people seem to be going through it right now. I think right now is a really difficult time for a lot of people, and to have an encouraging note or a surprise or something positive come out of the blue is really powerful.
Yeah, I would agree with you. All the outreach that I've done, the emails that have come back, people are just sort of saying, "Oh, we really need this right now. We're excited about it." And so, I thought people were going to request, 10 cards here, 20 cards there. And we've got people who are saying like, "Nope, 1,000 cards. I want 1,000 cards to hand out to all my residents in this residential community," or, 600 cards to hand out to patients in a hospital, schools. And so it's been so gratifying to see it catch on like this. So very exciting. Can you talk to me a little bit, Nikki, about, some people might sort of write this off and say, "Oh, listen, all that's going on in the world, people, as you mentioned, are struggling for a range of reasons." Like, what possible difference could it make to get, a card from a stranger in the city? What's your best argument, particularly in light of the U.S. Surgeon General's prescription for folks in the country in terms of loneliness and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I think that, for all those reasons you just said, now is the perfect time, and this is the perfect project for what everyone's going through right now. As you mentioned, the Surgeon General issued a loneliness epidemic for the country, and people around the world have been feeling this too. And if you're in a dark place, or if you're having a bad day, if you're feeling lonely, if you feel like the world doesn't care about you, to receive, a piece of kindness from a stranger, that, even someone that's not personally connected to you cares about you, that can really like lighten you up on a dark day. And it's just the beginning. You have a connection with someone, like someone gives you a card, that's a one-on-one connection that you've had, and it might change your viewpoint for the rest of the day. Maybe you'll be more open to, spreading kindness as well, or smiling at someone that you walk by. And those little acts of kindness throughout the day, and then can turn into something bigger and turns into culture change. I mean, right now we're given all these negative messages. We're told that we're a divided country, that we have so many differences. But really, if you have the opportunity to connect with someone, you see that, we have more in common than we have more apart. And this is the start of a conversation to start seeing that.
Yeah, I can tell you from past experiences, it's Boston. So sometimes when I hand out those cards, people are like, I don't want that card. But for the most part, people are really enthusiastic. I've gotten people hugging me, and sometimes, you hand somebody a card and they can't quite process what you're giving them. But then you sort of turn around as you're kind of walking away and you see that person reading the card and really smiling. And so it's just almost like, when you walk down the street sometimes and you say hello to people, maybe they don't say hello back in that second, but they're processing the fact that somebody reached out to them with a smile or a word, and you just never know how far that can go. So to me, it's a lot of work every year, but it's so, so worth it. And let me just ask you, Nikki, in your own life, can you think of a time when somebody's sort of surprised you with kindness, and it might have been just something real small, but it's really made an impact?
Yeah, so maybe this is a bigger answer than you expected, or maybe a little heavier than you're looking for. But so my father passed away recently, and the years, but really the months and weeks leading up to that and afterwards were very difficult for me and my family. And the people that kind of came out of the woodwork to support my mom, me, my sister, the whole family, it was unexpected, and it meant a lot. So like, for example, at my father's services, I had a friend that I hadn't seen for about 10 years, and we haven't even really spoken to each other in that long. Life has just gone in different directions. And she came from Rhode Island and showed up there, and like just seeing her face, and like, not a stranger, but someone like thought of me that hadn't thought of me for a long time. And just knowing that, all this time I had been in her thoughts, and her, showing up for me in a bad moment, like it meant the world. And just so many people had showed up or sent texts. And I'll tell you that experience, and knowing like how much that meant to me and how much that made me feel less alone. I since then I've been much better at reaching out to other people that I know are going through something similar. And I'll send a text message to someone that maybe won't expect it, but I heard through the grapevine that they're going through something, and just, knowing what that means.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's something I'm always thinking about is the fact that we just have no idea what other people are going through, and so just be kind as often as we possibly can. I will just say very briefly that I always think about this time when I literally I bumped up against somebody in traffic, in stop and go traffic in Dorchester. And
We've all been there.
I know. I was reading my phone, my text message was bad. Anyway, the woman came out and she was, there was a sign that said baby on board, and I was panicked that something had happened. And she came out and, checked on the baby. The baby was fine. She came over and she saw how panicked I was. Complete stranger, obviously. And she just opened up her arms and she literally folded me into her arms. She said, "It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." And like at the time, I was going through something, and it was not okay, But the fact that a stranger in the street had given me that hug was foundational for me. And I often remember that when I'm going through hard times. So I think if one of these little pieces of of kindness makes its way to somebody who needs it, let alone 10,000, we've sort of accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. So
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
only
I
the
mean,
start too, right? We're working with over 70 community partners and individuals on this. I hope this is the beginning of a conversation to continue to try to connect people, not only for the Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge, but throughout the year, and to start growing partnerships and learning more about who is doing this work and who is interested in it, and just getting together as a community and becoming something bigger and better than we've ever been.
awesome. All right. On that note, thank you, Nikki. Great chatting with you. And thanks, Sandra, for giving us the opportunity. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cara and Nikki. Dr. Joo, as we close, what key takeaway would you like to give our viewers to help them see this time of the year as something positive?
Yeah, so again, relationships are key to health. In addition to physical, mental health, they're all connected. And if you're feeling lonely, especially kind of chronically lonely, then I really encourage you not to sweep it under the rug, but to do something about it. And it doesn't have to be a revolutionary change. It can be incremental. And even small changes are really, really important.
Okay. Dr. Joo, thank you for sharing your wisdom and compassion with us today. Your insight reminds us that while a day like Valentine's may emphasize romantic love, there are countless ways to connect with others and nurture ourselves during this time of this year.
Yeah.
And we want to inspire you to celebrate Valentine's Day by spreading love in all its forms. This month, we're challenging you, our viewers, to perform one act of kindness, whether it's reaching out to a neighbor, writing a heartfelt note, or volunteering your time. And if you can, share your act of kindness with us on social media using #InLonelinessMA. And let's make this month about connections, not comparisons. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Connect. Join us next month as we continue our journey to build connections and promote healthy aging. Until then, take care, stay connected, and let's spread kindness. Visit us at inlonelinessma.com to watch previous episodes of Connect, learn more about the coalition, and discover ways you can join the movement to help alleviate loneliness and promote healthy aging in Massachusetts.
Funding for this program, and many like the ones you see on your local channels, is provided through monies collected from cable subscriptions. These subscriptions have decreased sharply over the last few years, meaning less money for public, educational, and government programming. Please contact your Massachusetts legislators and ask them to co-sign on an act to modernize funding for community media programming. It's SD 399 in the Senate and HD 326 in the House. Help us to protect funding for community media organizations like the one you're watching now. Thank you.